everybody, thanks so much for joining me. Make sure that your guitar is tuned up. Let's just start off by making sure we're tuned up. First of all, thank you for being here. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time it is for you. If you're at work, chances are you probably don't have your guitar, and you can certainly watch this on a replay some other time as well. But if you do have your guitar, let's go ahead and get tuned up real quick, and then we're going to start getting right into this three-step formula that I've done here, this soloing formula. So here's your sixth string, and your fifth string, and your fourth string, and your third string, and my third string, and your second string, and your first string. All right, cool. Again, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be looking at this three-step soloing formula, and I'm actually going to give you a lot of stuff. So I can't go through it all in detail, but at least you're going to have this outline, this platform, if you will, to be able to follow, to really understand better how to approach soloing. So for me, the first thing that you need to understand is that whenever you're going to solo over something, you've got a set of tools at your disposal or not, right? And let's just think about that. What are some of the tools that we have? Well, one of them is visualization of our fretboard, and this is absolutely imperative to your success in creating a solo, having fun, being creative, all these different kinds of things across your fretboard. I've always told my students, if you can see it, you can play it, which the opposite of that, of course, is if you can't see it, you're not going to use it, right? So learning to visualize your fretboard enables you to be more creative across the fretboard. Now, we're not going to get into great detail because we only have so much time today together in this webinar, but let's just kind of understand this. If I was going to solo over something, and what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be focusing on the key of G major. Now, oftentimes I do pentatonic, and I get a lot of people that request that I do things more diatonic once in a while too. So that's what we're going to do today. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be using this right here, the G major scale. And you'll notice I have a little bit of delay on my guitar, a little bit of reverb, some things like that. Just because we're going to be talking about soloing. So I've got my Hughes and Kentner set up with some of these different things on there. You can have your guitar set up however you like. It's perfectly fine. But the big thing here is we're going to be using those notes. Okay? Now, that can be expanded out, and I'm going to show you the rest of this. And again, this isn't going to be just about how to play a scale. If that's where you are in your soloing or in your journey on guitar, that's perfectly fine, okay? I'm going to go through a lot of different things. So you just have to relate this to wherever you are. If you're doing pentatonic, then relate it to pentatonic, and it's perfectly fine. So let me give you the whole thing, and this is in your PDF as well. I'm going to play this whole shape that we're going to be talking about right here. And what we're really doing right there is we're playing 7 notes, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do scale. And then we're playing another octave of it. And then we're playing the rest of it before we run out of strings. And then I run out of strings right there, so that's as far as I can go. Now again, you might know your G major scale right here. And it's okay. The point isn't the scale or the shape that I'm playing. The point is just understanding that one of the tools that you have is the availability of being able to see some sort of a scale across the fretboard. Now, if all I knew was this one position of G major, that doesn't mean I can't make music with it. I can certainly make music with it. But if I know how to play those notes, which in this case, again, I'm playing G major, G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp over and over and over, the more availability I have to be able to play those in different places across the guitar, the more creative I can possibly get. Now, we've got a long way to go here and a lot of stuff to talk about, but just please understand that. If I was given a jam track, and I've got a jam track here that I'm going to use, okay? And this is in the key of G. Now, I'm just going to play a scale. I'm not going to try and get all fast and get overly melodic or anything like that. I'm just going to try and play the scale, and I'm just going to show you this here. So here I go. So I could definitely make some music inside this position, and we're going to learn how to do that. That's something we're going to be talking about. But one thing I really want you to be aware of is, as a guitar player, I want to continually try and find things that keep me interested in playing. I need to stay motivated. I need this instrument to be exciting for me, so I want to pick it up every day and practice. Along the way, if you get the opportunity, I also want this to be interesting to somebody who's listening or who's watching me play. And so it's not just me, it's also an interaction with somebody else, whether it's my band or people that, come out to see me play or whatever it might be. And I have found that the more mastery, if you will, of my fretboard and how to play a particular scale on my fretboard, the more options I have to move around and do something interesting. That doesn't equate to better just because you can do it, but it certainly gives you more opportunity. And I always think of it like if you were driving to the grocery store, you're driving to, who knows where you're driving to. If you have more options of roads, you can choose to drive somewhere because you want to get there quickly. Or you want to drive a particular way because it's more scenic or it's more interesting, or you want to stop and visit somebody. There's a million different reasons why you would do it. If you were only given one option, it probably would get awfully boring after a while. So learning how to visualize your scales is really important. So what I want you to do, I'm going to make sure in the PDF that there is a picture of this G major scale that I just played, and then we're also going to give you a picture of the entire G major scale across the whole fretboard. And I don't want it to intimidate you, and I don't want it to be confusing. I just want you to see the difference between seeing it in one spot on the guitar and then being able to see it across the entire fretboard. Okay? So now let's start that same jam track over. And I'm not going to try and play overly melodic or anything. I'm just trying to play. But this time what I want to do is move around a little bit more. I'm going to use more of my fretboard, okay? I'm not trying to do anything crazy. I'm just trying to utilize more of the fretboard. And when I do that, it gives me more opportunity in different positions, obviously. It gives me more opportunity in low sounds and kind of middle sounds and really high sounds with my thinner strings, right? Things like that I couldn't do if I just played down here. The other thing is with all these different positions, it enables me to see more ideas like arpeggios, for instance. Maybe I want to see something on my guitar that becomes a little more interesting, and it moves me across the guitar this way, creates more of a flow. And there's certainly the opportunity to be able to take one string and do things like that as well, where I'm just moving on a single string and trying to create some stuff. So the point is I don't want you to limit yourself just because you're in a practicing stage. We're all practicing. Everybody, okay? Every guitar player out there. But if you limit yourself by going, well, this is all I need and I feel comfortable here, every once in a while break out of that comfort zone and try and figure out something else that might take you to the next level. And for me, one part of that is certainly being able to see your scales in multiple positions across a fretboard. I'm not saying you have to do them all. I'm not saying you have to do them in all the keys. That's an entirely different thing for each guitar player. But having that freedom is certainly going to give you more confidence and more availability to get more creative. Second part of this is learning how to see chords across the guitar. This is really, really important as well. So if you think about it, if I wanted to play a song, let's say I was playing the rhythm part to this song. And the first chord that I'm playing, this thing is actually going G, B minor, C, and D. Okay, but let's just say I was playing that G chord. Now, if you think back when you first started learning how to play guitar, you may have only known the open chord of G. And then somewhere along the line, you learned how to play a G bar chord. And then you learned how to play a fifth string G bar chord. Different kinds of things like that. And then eventually you learn how to play what's referred to as a caged chording system, which allows you to see whatever chord you want across the entire fretboard. Now, again, these are all different studies. And I'm not telling you because there's a lot of people viewing this, I'm not telling just you that you have to do all this and you have to have it done by a certain amount of time. I'm just saying, again, it gives you freedom. So if I'm jamming with somebody and they're going, let's just say they're doing that G chord. And so I go up and I try and find somewhere else to play this G, right? So I'm going to move up and I'm going to do G here. So I'm doing this 5th string bar chord. And I start kind of doing this little picking thing. And I kind of like that, right? So somebody else is playing this G chord and I've gone up to another chordal shape of the same chord, right? But just somewhere else on the guitar. Let's say I go up, I take D and I move D up until it becomes G, right? So I take the 8th fret of the 2nd string and the 7th fret of the 3rd string, and I start doing something like that along with this other person that's playing. And I'm going. Something like that, right? It gives me availability to do something a little bit different somewhere else on the guitar instead of just playing this chord. Now, after a little while, we're going to learn how these merge together and how important that is. But that's visualizing your fretboard. That's one of the most crucial tools you can have. If you can see it, you can play it. That doesn't mean you can play it well necessarily. That's a whole other category, okay? But you are able to utilize it. So that brings us to the second soloing tool, which is technique, which is the answer. If you can see it and you can play it, but you can't play it very well, well, technique is where you come in. Now, there's often arguments with guitar players on technique on whether or not you should be able to play this fast or be able to do this sweep or do this string skipping thing. Those are all personal preferences. I'm just saying the more control you have with what you can see and the availability to use your fingers on your guitar with what you're seeing, the more confidence you have. The more attitude you can have when you play, right? So if I'm looking at my guitar and I want to do something in the key of G, right? So this thing's playing again. Let me start this little jam track here. And I do this. Something like that. Okay? Well, now all of a sudden what I'm doing is a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs. I'm just playing here, so I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm using hammer-ons and pull-offs, and in order to do that, I've got to have a certain amount of strength, flexibility, and dexterity in these fingers to be able to do that. So for me, I always break technique down into really 2 different things, kind of 3, but certainly 2. Your left hand ability, which is your fretting hand, unless you're, playing the other direction, then it's fine too. But if you think about it as your fretting hand, and having that strength of individual fingers, developing that is going to be really important because that allows you to execute certain things on your fretboard that you can see. The next thing is the picking hand, which for me is my right hand, right? So my picking hand, I've got to be able to pick at the speed that my hand is moving at. Now, I can learn to pick a lot faster if I choose to, do all these sorts of things, and that's fine too. Okay, but at the very least, I need to be able to pick wherever this hand is choosing to go to make things happen. So I'm combining now my visualization of my G major scale with the availability of having my left hand, the strength of my left hand, and the accuracy of my picking hand work together to move me across the fretboard. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that I have the creativity or the musicality yet, but these are tools to get us there. Okay? So the next thing that I want you to think about, and we're going to chat just a little bit about this, is understanding. Fretboard understanding. And I always refer to this as guitar theory and not music theory because it depends on what world you come from. If you are a music theory person, let's say you grew up and you had, 15 years of piano lessons or something, you probably know your music theory quite well. Maybe, maybe not. Where another guitar player might have just come from this whole world of rock and roll and doesn't really understand a lot of theory and key signatures and all these things, but they do understand how music kind of works together from a visual perspective. And I often refer to that as guitar theory. But my point is that there's got to be something that makes sense. When this chord is being played, which is a G chord, it's giving you some element of information that then should tell you what your options might be on your fretboard. If you hear that G and you don't think of anything, that's where guitar theory might become very beneficial for you, because you're thinking, okay, well, this G chord's being played. The notes are G, B, and D, for instance. So when I go to solo, I might decide I want to try and emphasize the note B, right? So I do it as a bend. And I just went to the note B, and it works just fine over the top of that. Or maybe you don't know your theory, and you don't know all your notes on your fretboard, but you are able to go, well, G. Okay, so I see a G chord right here. So that enables me to visualize the notes of that G chord, even though I don't know what they are, even though I don't know my theory, right? But I do know that if this chord is being played, all of these notes become notes that I can emphasize or try and land on within the context of my solo. You see? And that's where melody starts coming in. Now the next chord pops up. The next chord, for instance, in this particular chord progression is B minor. Well, then B minor pops up, and I can see B minor in different places, like the visualization part we talked about. Now that gives me availability again to try and emphasize something within those chords. Now we're going to get to that in just a little while, but this is crucial to your playing. So your ability to see something on your fretboard, maybe you can't see everything, maybe you can't see all the chords or all the positions of a scale, but you can see something, right? And you're kind of learning how they work together. Okay, so we can see it, we're able to play to a certain degree with our fingers, be able to execute the things we want to do. And then the third part is understanding, having some basic sense of this chord is being played, so these are some options that I have, either because I know my theory or because I can see things on my guitar. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense to you, okay? Again, these could go on for hours. We could talk for 10 hours just about these things. And we don't have that kind of time, unfortunately, but I do want you to be aware of that. So one thing that you want to do is start sculpting your journey, your guitar journey. So instead of always just being blinded by the bright light syndrome, which is what guitar players have, where we start working on something and then, oh, hey, this, and then we start working on this and then go, oh, well, look at that, that's shiny, and then we start working on that. And we're just all over the place, as opposed to trying to focus on something that we know we really need, and we just have to take the time and develop it. Because once we've fully developed whatever this concept is that we're trying to work on, it becomes ours, and we own it, and we can use it, right? And we can become confident with our playing and all these other things that can happen. Then we can move on to the next thing. But if we're just jumping around like a frog all the time, just moving around, it's hard to bring all this stuff in and really start building a path for ourselves. So for me, I always tell people dream and enjoy the ride, right? Enjoy the journey and learn all kinds of different things. But if you're trying to work on the core of you, if you're trying to develop something that is absolutely quintessential you, that you can use when you jam with other people or you play on stage or you write songs or whatever, you've got to start developing that. And you don't just develop that from, flying around trying different things, but you develop that by really trying to focus on something that's going to make a big difference in your playing. Okay? So that's the first section, which is the soloing tools. It's really important for us to think about that. Okay?